Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Are you somebody who has seen the energy bill pass through Parliament with the royal assent from King whatever he is, and suddenly you are worried that someone's going to break your doors down and say, sorry mate, you've got to have this smart meter? Or are you somebody who's got bills coming in left, right and centre and going, my God, the electricity's going up. Everything's got to go into electricity. It's a nightmare. What are we going to do? Well, by popular request, a lady from up north, lovely lady, I've just been talking to her, has agreed to come on and says we can have free energy nationwide. Is that possible? Maybe it is. Kales, welcome to the show.
Lovely to see you, Richard.
Thank you so much for coming on. Free energy nationwide. I think this is a joy that everybody will be, they're praying that not only the prices come down, but we could have it for free. How is that possible?
Well, shall I explain a little bit about the Telegram group?
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah?
So this is your Telegram. I should have said that. I did actually write it down as well. But, I'm rubbish at these interview things. You run this Telegram group. Yeah, do tell us all about it.
So it started off with us on our journey, sovereignty journey, understanding birth certificate fraud. That's where it originally started 3 years ago. So we were already going down different routes and paths on understanding that utility bills specifically are already prepaid through our income taxes. So that's how we weren't paying any bills, and we moved houses a couple of times. In the house, the last house that we moved into, we had smart meters. They were already fitted. So we thought, well, we're not having smart devices. We're not having any of those freaky things in our house. So we removed them and we just put mid-certified standard meters in. And we talked about that on another influencer's channel, that, look, we're not paying any bills. We've not done it for a year, but this is what we've decided to do to get rid of these smart devices out of our properties. And that's not illegal, that's not a crime, etc. And it kind of blew up overnight, literally blew up on Telegram, because we don't do websites or social media much. We don't do much of that. And everybody was like, I want mine doing. And it was just ping, ping, ping all over the UK. And then we started a Telegram group because we started to build. There's a lot of documentation that you need to read. You need to do a bit of research because, like you said, you may find yourself with a locksmith, a representative waving a warrant of entry outside of the house. That's always a possibility. So we started to build this Telegram group full of documentation, so you can find a no trespass notice. You don't have to buy one. There's one there that you can download, print off, put it on your front door. There's lots of information on the file section. We started to build over 100 pinned messages. We started to do interviews. And it just grew, and we are where we are today. So the actual concept is very easy about replacing your own meters. So the meters, wherever you live, wherever the situation, whether you rent, you're in a council property, a housing association, or you own the property, you can remove the meter that's in there via a qualified engineer. And obviously we've built a small team of engineers that are awakened, as I call it.
Right.
Yes, a lot of engineers are indoctrinated through the training, but a lot of us are that are still in the matrix. But these are trusted engineers that are obviously willing to do this. So they can take the meter out, we put it back, fit a new meter, brand new meter that's non-smart, because that's important. But this meter is not attached to any database that's shared amongst all of these suppliers, and we'll call them suppliers because that's what a lot of people know them as. But I mean, if you're on a group session with myself, I call them brokers because they're just the middleman to the national grid. So that's all they are. What they do is they rent the serial number on the back of the meters. That's all they have. They don't own the meters either. We don't know who owns them in most cases, and we're not really interested.
No.
But do you want me to stop there? Because otherwise I'll carry on rambling.
No, this is all very interesting. I'm going to break it. I'm going to break it down a bit. So just because now there will be people who are halfway on the journey. There'll be people who are well beyond, and then there'll be new people going, what? What did you just say? So I
Yeah.
try to sort of cater for everybody where I can. So let's just start at first base then.
Yes.
I'm in a house. It's a 2 up, 2 down, simple terrace house. When I moved in 30 years ago, there's a meter there. It's an old-fashioned meter with a thing going round like this.
Yes, the old
And
analog ones. Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
when possible, I try to stop that from going around. Obviously, not by taking the thing apart,
Yeah.
but by not turning too much on, because I know if it goes around too much, the bill comes in, and you go, bloody hell, really?
Yeah.
What, for putting a fire on? And I imagine there's a lot of people in that who think the same. Then we've got the smart meters, which are supposed to be there for our use to sort of manage our stuff, but it's got Wi-Fi, EMFs,
Yeah.
and of course
It's
the
terrible for your
possibility.
health. Yeah. For your
Yeah.
health and well-being. And the second thing is they can remotely connect.
And remotely connect, which is something I don't like. But let's just go back. Electricity is being generated somewhere, and some people say that they're nicking it from the ether, and they're doing some
Correct.
magic
If you
with
want
it.
to go down another rabbit hole, but maybe that's a little bit too much
Right.
for a lot of people
But-
at this stage.
But most people think it's being generated by all sorts of different mechanisms, like the solar panel and the wind farms and coal
Yeah.
things and what have you. So it's generated somehow, and then it's piped down to you through the wires, and it hits your box, and at that point you're metered, and then it goes into yours, and then however much it's recorded. Now, years, because I'm relatively old, I remember having to go down to Seaboard and paying by check for the amount of electricity that I used to do, because it used to be in the town. And at one point we had a key meter, so you
Yeah.
go down with this stupid little thing, and
Oh
you
yeah,
get
yeah.
it.
They still have those. Yeah.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they
Because
do.
we had no money whatsoever, so it was that sort of, oh God, there's £5 on here. We've got to make that last a week. I got a little bit more affluent than that, and I managed to get back onto an account.
Yeah.
But my understanding now is the utility companies that chop and change every 2 minutes, and I've had a few that have gone bankrupt, and now you're with somebody else, and it's like, oh, I didn't know that. That they are sort of the middlemen. They're not generating anything.
No.
They're just collecting money for the national grid, and you're paying them, and then presumably they're paying the national grid. Is that pretty
No,
much?
well, there's not a lot of information. There's so much information. There's not just one document that says it all, because there isn't.
Right.
It's not going to be that easy. But National Grid already get paid through our income taxes via the government. So
Do they?
National Grid are not interested if you change your meters or you don't pay these middlemen, Eons, Scottish Powers, etc. They're not interested.
So hold on, just stop there, because that's
Yeah.
the fundamental, very important thing to get across.
Yeah.
So the electricity is already bought and paid for.
Yes, energy consumption, not the meters, but the energy
No,
consumption.
no.
Yeah.
But it's so in other words, if you just sort of look at it as like potatoes,
Yes.
there's a big load of potatoes.
Mhm.
They're already paid for. So really and truly, the only thing that you, in theory, should be paying for is, I'd like some potatoes. Could you just deliver them to me? And they go, how many do you want? I'll have all that lot. Great.
Yeah.
So presumably what we're paying for is just the delivery of it.
Not even the delivery, just the actual rental of the meter that's taking the readings.
Right.
You can do freedom of information requests to these Eons, Scottish Powers, etc., to ask them, do you, because they call themselves suppliers, do you supply electric and gas? Do you own the wires, the pipes? Do you own the meters? Do you make gas and electric? You can ask them all these in a series of information requests. They'd be very reluctant to answer certain questions as well. They always most likely refer you back to the national grid as well.
Right.
But we've had a couple of them in email, which again, we've got it on our group as evidence to, when you're trolling through all the pinned messages, to show that they will tell you, you can change your meters if you like, but it's got to be by a qualified engineer.
Right.
They will actually tell you that if you pin them down, and depending on which approach you take, because a lot of people are halfway through a 2-year fixed deal with Scottish Power, or they might already be on a prepayment. You know, you mentioned the key fob,
Yes.
the dash thing. A lot of people are on those, because they can top it up at the shop, etc. There's various different types of meters, and we can change them all. It doesn't necessarily have to be a smart meter. The point being that you're removing the meter that's in the property.
Yes.
Because you don't want to use a meter that the brokers have on their database, because that's what they're charging you for, the service of that meter. So the idea is you have your own meter that you own, that's your property. You have that put back in, and you gain energy in exactly the same way as you did before. You just don't have to send meter readings anywhere.
No, because you can look at it yourself and decide how much you want to pay for your own electricity, which may be naught.
But it's not, Richard, that we're doing anything untoward, that we're just not contributing to society, because it's already prepaid. We're through our income taxes. So when we buy food, when we buy clothes, etc., everything's included. We've got a government expenditure report from 2021 as a PDF document on the group. Have a look through that. There's loads of information, and people join the group because they're newbies and they're like, how can this be possible? They just don't believe it. But they've got to spend their own time researching through the group. If they need more help, that's fine. We've got the mechanisms to do that now. We've got group sessions and one-to-ones. We do all stuff like that as well. But really, it's about you going through your consciousness awakening and understanding who you are, what's happened at birth, if you do have a birth certificate, because that helps you understand everything else that follows, not just to do with free electric, gas and electric, but water is another one that's already prepaid. I mean, it comes from the sky, but we're still paying for it.
Well, that's true. Yes, I suppose they say that. I suppose they say they're treating it, aren't they? And they're making it.
Well, not treating it; they're poisoning us.
Well, poisoning it. You're paying for some lovely poisoned water. We'll add a bit of fluoride in there, and God knows what heavy metals.
Also, 20 to 30 chemicals when you do get the information, when you do a freedom of information request. It's terrible.
And you're paying for it.
And we're paying for it. And people are like, oh, I'm not bothered about my water. Well, it doesn't matter if it was £5 or £50 a month. It's not about the money. I know that's what attracts people to.
Yes.
For us, it wasn't about the money. It was about actually finding out the fraud that's gone with it.
Well, absolutely, and we've been talking about on this channel, the various different frauds with council tax and all these other things. So, so let's go back to the fundamentals. The electricity is bought and paid for. You're renting a meter,
yes,
which then the government or your utility bills will say, oh, it's all gone up or it's all gone down, or the fluctuating price of electricity, and you go, well, hang on a minute. If I'm just renting the meter, why isn't the meter £5 a month rental? Or I've been in my house 32 years, so surely I've paid for that meter by now. And actually, that meter's cost me tens of thousands, I should think, over 30 years of whatever it is. It's like, at some point, how much do you want that meter to cost me? So then it seems to make sense. Change the meter so you become your own billing agent. You don't need these other people anymore.
Yeah, you don't need them, do you? Because you can gain energy. You're gaining energy direct anyway, because they're not doing anything.
Right.
They don't own the meter. They don't own the pipe work. They don't own the wire. They don't own anything.
So you're telling me as I call them up on the phone, they're not sitting there peddling like mad, generating the electricity for me.
No, and that's what National Grid is, harnessing the energy. That's what's distributing it. So you don't need an E.ON or Scottish Power to actually get energy to your house, direct. It doesn't work like that. You don't need them.
Right. So it's another huge scam.
It's a massive scam. It's fraud. And what they do is they're bully boys, right? And they will apply pressure, but not to everybody, just the minority. So the majority of us on our group, we've got over 13,500 members on our group. We had a group before that as well, there was 11,500 at the point we did that. So it's quite big, and there's lots of other little groups that have jumped on the bandwagon as well, which is great because the UK is huge, and Ireland as well. I forgot what I was going to say now. I've lost my tracks.
So let's talk about the contract then, because you give them the jurisdiction, or you consent to them supplying you effectively nothing.
Yes.
Because it's already there, and you're agreeing to pay several £100s a month.
Yeah.
And they're basically just sitting there paying a few people to answer the questions and say, can you give us your readings, but effectively. And you're paying this. They're obviously making fat profits out of this.
Well, yeah, we've seen the profits that they've made in the last couple of years. Jesus.
Yeah, which so there are people who are not eating because they need to eat for the children, or they're, whichever way around it is. And so going to this contract, so you get a contract, which isn't even a proper contract because you can't even negotiate.
Yeah, you say contract. It's not. There's a verbal contract based on you giving them information, i.e. your legal fiction. That's what happens.
Yes, absolutely. So this is great because we've been talking about legal fiction and stuff, so people will go, oh, this is to do with the legal. It's not just as simple as it sounds, that you just unplug it, because everything, it seems, comes back down to this damn legal fiction.
It doesn't.
But that, if you're in the know, that's where we can take advantage of it.
Yes.
Yes. So there's the so-called contract. Now, if you're in so-called contract with somebody to supply, as you said, have you got to wait to the end of that contract and then go, I'm free, like John Inman?
No, you certainly don't. Because you're not in a contract, it's invalid because you don't actually receive such document. There's no offer, there's no agreement, and there's no wetting signatures from both parties ever received. You just, when you move in somewhere, what you do is you ring them up and say, oh God, if I set my bills up, I want to be a good citizen. Ring them up and say, I'm Kale Smith. I live on 20 Lambert Close. Just moved in, like to set my account up. And at that point, you've entered into this verbal contract, and that's, they've got you because they've got your legal fiction, you know where you live, etc. And you set a direct debit up, and that's what happens. But you don't have to wait. A lot of our customers are halfway through a particular deal, as they call it. So it's about closing that account down. So I always advise, there's lots of different approaches, because there's the formal approaches where you could do a notice of conditional acceptance, and you say, okay, I'm going to accept your claim because they're claiming that they supply that property, right? But I'm going to withhold from paying until you can provide me evidence of a contract, evidence that you own the meter, evidence that you are supplying this property. So you'll go down a series of questions, but they're not going to be cooperative with you, Richard. So a lot of people that go down that route that don't necessarily have that skill set of drafting letter templates and, dictating and leading that process. For me, I enjoy that because my background's employment law. So for me, it's very easy. But for a majority of people, that's not an approach that they feel comfortable with or they fully understand. So it's a good approach, but it's not the only approach. So we don't necessarily advise to do that, because majority of people that join just kind of want a quick, easy fix, which there isn't, but they want something a little bit more simpler. So I advise them to close their accounts down, give final meter readings of those meters that are in the property, ask for a final bill. And I always advise people, if you can afford it and it's within reason, then pay off that final bill, pay off that final debt, to shut that supplier up, to keep them happy. So that makes it.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
But you don't have to. Again.
All right. Okay.
This can go off on lots of different tangents. For me, not paid any final bills off, because for me, it's principle. Not that I can't afford it, but it's principle. I would think, well, if you've already had money from me through income taxes, why would I pay it now?
For doing bugger all. But if you've got, go on.
That comes with a lot of comeback. Well, comeback as in debt collectors and emails and letters.
Yes.
But for me, that's not really hassle.
So if you can, if you can afford it, and you go, okay, it's give me the final bill, which should only be that last month, shouldn't it?
It should be, but you'd be so surprised at what figures people have been given. I mean, I had one. A lady on a one-to-one, and she was given £8,000 as a final bill. It's just, and she was paying a direct debit every month, and it was just ridiculous. They're springing numbers out of thin air, and they wouldn't let that drop. even though that could not possibly be right, her giving meter readings every month, paying a direct debit, impossible.
No.
And that's just not the only one. There's lots of accounts that we could give as examples of these.
Well, it's absolutely, in that case you've got to fight it. But if you're say your regular, I don't know what a regular bill is. Let's say it's a couple of £100, just for the sake of argument, every month, and you're paying this every month, and you're coming towards the end of the month, and you ring up your supplier and say, "Oh, hello there, thanks very much. I'm going to change my supplier. I'm moving somewhere else. I'm going away for a few years. The house is going to be empty. So could you just give me my I'll just pay up to what I've used as of today, which based on what I normally do is a couple of £100. So I'll send you a cheque for £100 or pay on direct debit, blah, 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 blah. £100, give me the final bill. That's it." And in theory, I mean, will they say, "Oh, well, who are you going to change to? We can change."
Yeah, so there's certain things that, depending on what resonates for you, what you're prepared. Because remember, when you take this step of stepping back into your sovereignty, you are the one that has to lead that process. And we've got a lot of people that are still living in fear. So if you're still living in fear and you're on a low frequency and you go down this path, it's gonna be a nightmare for you, because you're gonna dread every knock at the door, every time the postman posts some mail through your letterbox. It's not a nice process. So it's about, for me, understanding the different approaches, choosing an approach that suits you, understanding potential comeback and potential risks, and we'll talk through those in a minute. And actually you dictating and leading that process as well. This is about sovereignty. We were born sovereign. We've just had that taken away from us. So it's remembering at each stage who you are and the powers that you have.
So what's the problem then if they agree? Let's say let's take the most simplest case. You say, "I've paid off the thing, and it's come to that date, and you've paid it off." Bang! You've made some excuse. I'm going to be away for it. The place is empty, so I just I don't need you. No one's going to use it. But of course, you pay them, and then they disappear. Then there's nobody billing you, but presumably you can still use the electricity. It's not like they've switched you off.
No, because they can't cut you off. They have to access the meter. So what tends to do? You close your account down. You pay off that final bill if you want to. You have the meter change, so you have your engineers out, your own engineers or our engineers, whoever, it doesn't really matter.
So are you saying that if you don't change the meter, then they can technically keep billing you?
Well, no. If it's a smart meter, obviously you need to get that removed, because they could switch you to prepayment mode. So they don't put you off, they could switch you to a prepayment mode if you don't pay a bill, etc. After some time. It doesn't happen straight away. But the second thing is, you don't want a smart meter in your property for various different reasons. So
we'll leave smart meters just for a minute.
If you've got like a standard meter, if you have a standard meter, you can certainly go down this process as well, exactly the same, and not have the meter changed. However, for us doing this in the last 2 years, we've come to realise that actually you can't claim that that's your property if you were to have hassle further down the line with somebody waiving a warrant of entry to access the meter, because although they don't own the meter, they are renting the serial number. We don't know who owns the meter. You can't claim then that it's your meter. Do you understand what I mean by that? I would feel...
It came with my house, though. I bought everything in my house.
You did indeed.
When I bought everything, it was like all the contents of my house, including, all the wires that came into the house. Because presumably from the boundary onwards, that's all mine, isn't it?
It's true. But if you want to look at it this way, and again, this is everyone's personal preference, it's non-smart meter. You don't own that meter. I know you're saying you bought everything, but you don't actually own it because you've got no receipts for it or anything, right? You're being billed for this because they've got the serial number on their database, remember, if you don't remove it. You've still got that meter and you're still using it. So do you feel that they could still potentially have a claim to bill you for the rental of that meter, because it's not, you don't own it, and that's why a lot of people prefer to have their own meters, because they so they can start the meter readings from zero. But again, you don't have to, Richard. We've got
no. I'm just thinking of Mrs. Miggs, who's a bit worried about everything, but wants to do this because she can't afford it. So you've convinced Mrs. Miggs now that for whatever price it costs to change the meter, which might be a few £100 to buy a new meter.
It's expensive because it's an engineer, the qualified gas and electrical engineer, and they're travelling as well. So literally, they might travel all the way to Scotland just to do 2 meters, 2 houses, and travel all the way back. That might take them 17 hours.
So what would be a ballpark, just
if
vaguely?
It's a normal meter, because again, people have economy 7, people have 3 phases.
Right. Okay.
Commercial properties that have it done as well. So it could be anything from 450 to 550, roughly.
Right. Let's say it's 500. Let's say it's 500 quid.
Meter, it's going to fluctuate depending on what you've got.
So if you were already paying 200 a month, you've paid it off in 2.5 months.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people's bills are. I know I'm saving about between £800 and £900 a month. And ours is only a 3-bed house, but because we use a lot of electricity, because we have water distillers on, like literally 10 hours a day we have our distillers on. We've got quite a few different ones that literally.
Well, it's funny you should say it, because somebody convinced me to buy one, and I put it on, and I just watched this bloody thing going around like that.
It absolutely zonks it. And again, if you've got a big family, then we have got quite a few distillers, and they're on like 10 hours a day because we drink loads of water as well. But I know we save a lot of money. If you're just somebody on your own in a little 1-bed, it's probably not going to be worth it, is it? Like a 1-bed.
Well, I don't know. It depends how long you're going to be there. So anyway, going back, so Mrs. Miggs has said, right, okay, for 500 quid, I can have the meter changed. So there you are. Somebody comes in, they change the meter. It's her own meter. And so she can now, says nobody can come in and say, we're coming to take your meter away. Because, they said, we might as well take the wires then and pull them out from the house if you can without electrocuting yourself. So she's got her own meter. It's all zeroed. So at that point, she's got electricity and there's no utility bill. So it comes to the end of the month. She's written out her numbers. Oh, look, it's now 0000111, whatever it is. And she goes, I'm paying that to me because the National Grid don't need the money. There's no utility. So she's not actually paying anything. So she's saving that money. Does that then stop there? Because who's hurt? At that point, who's hurt?
Well, what tends to happen is after you've closed the account down, what generally happens, a lot of people have experienced this when they move in new properties, or if they're in the same property, they might be receiving mail from the previous tenant to the previous tenant from the billing agent. So what tends to happen is letters will come addressed to the occupier of the property or the owner, right? Yeah. And that can continue forever. Letters come in, you might get 3 a week. So we generally advise people, it's addressed to the occupier, so you don't need to read it because that's mail fraud. It's not you, it's not who you are. So you tear it up, you put it in the bin, you don't read it because it's going to start messing up here.
Can you send it to, can you return to sender?
Well, I wouldn't, because it's addressed to the occupier, right? If it's after some time starts to be addressed to the the fictitious entity, the legal fiction, then you can, at that point, you can continue to ignore it and not joinder, or you can return it to sender, write on the envelope, no contract, etc., or legal fiction unknown at this address. You can return it, but you might be doing that a couple of times a week because they're automated letters. And
yes, but who are they coming from?
From the billing agent. So the billing agent, don't forget, say if you close your account down and you're going to move out, or if you're moving in a new property, you've got mail anchor on the floor and it's addressed to the occupier, and when you've settled in, that's when you then ring them up. That billing agent that's
But I'm just on this very simplistic, because I know there's obviously lots of different versions of it. Yeah. So there's Mrs. Miggs. She's got rid of, she's closed the account. She's paid it off. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
She's got rid of the meat. The meat is gone, or she's put it in the cupboard under the stairs. So should somebody come round and say, well, we come for the meat, he said, there it is. Thanks. Well, what do you mean? Have you taken it off yourself, miss? Yes, I did, actually. I've got some very nice men came in. They took it off. So you can say, there's your meter. Goodbye. Close. She's got her own meter on there. And bills come in, or brown envelopes to the occupier. And she says, well, that's not me. My name's Mrs. Miggs. I'm not the occupier. I don't know who that is. So she's either torn them up or just returned them to sender, or given them to a neighbour and said, are you the occupier? You can have that.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Who's sending... I mean... It can't be the utility bill people. I mean, will they notice that?
No, they don't. Well, unless you
24 Acacia Avenue suddenly started using electricity again when they closed the account.
No,
but it's not our meter.
What happens is they keep the UK database, but they share amongst all the suppliers. They still have that old serial number from the old meters, right? They still have that on their database. So what they're going to do is they're going to still claim that they supply that property until a new occupier moves in and rings them up and opens an account up with them. So that's kind of like the general process.
So could you not say, you ring up your that when you close the account and they say, well, how are you going to do? And I'll say, well, I get my electricity from Vobes Enterprises now, which would be me, you see. And they go, oh, I see, we'll write that down and we'll send the thing to Vobes Enterprises. And basically you just set up your own company to be or your own sole trader to be a supplier of electricity, and of course you're such a terrible business person you never actually bill anybody, i.e. yourself.
I like that idea.
And so then they go, well, it's not us, it's this company called Vobes Enterprises, who presumably will go bankrupt if he doesn't. It's like, yeah, maybe he will, maybe he won't.
It's a really good idea, that. Because I just actually, last week, I didn't set an energy company up, but I did set my name on my birth certificate up as a limited company.
Right.
But obviously I'm not trading, it's dormant.
Yeah.
Interesting. Not because of that, just because I'm doing a thing with mortgages and stuff like that, claiming mortgages back. But that's interesting, that, Richard. Maybe that would be an option and an approach to take, because this is about being creative with your own circumstances. There's nothing to say that you say, look, I'm changing suppliers to this supplier. They're not going to accept it, of course.
No. I don't know whether you have to be credited to be a...
Probably you would do, because they share this database, and that's where they do all these serial numbers. So when you swap from E.ON to Scottish Power, they transfer that serial number of the meters over to the new supplier. Then you get billed from the new supplier. This is why you like to do that switch, if you've heard of the switch, where they sell it to you like, look, you'll have no hassle, we'll do it all.
Yeah, we do it automatically.
Because they want to make sure that that's being billed, and that's why they want you to have smart meters in, because they haven't got the capacity to send an engineer out to do a little investigation, and the people that come out to read your meters, etc. That they won't need to do all that. That costs them a lot of money to do that.
Yeah, of course.
Out. So that's why letters is very easy, because it's automated. They'll send letters out, and again, a lot of people that are still living in fear, Richard, will start to open up that communication line again, because they're thinking, oh, they're threatening to come out to my address to do an investigation, etc. So a lot of people that are still reading mail, that are still absorbing the words that they use, etc., then start to attract that attention, or maybe they're still communicating. Say if somebody comes out, because sometimes very normal for someone to come and read the meter, so they'll come to the property, and that's when a lot of times it goes wrong, because people give information away unknowingly because they're put on the spot.
Of course. So it was suggested to me that in my little 2 up 2 down house that I put a little post box at the end by the gate where you come in, and call that let's say I live at 10 Downing Street. I'd call that 10A, and then on my house I would call it 10B.
Yes.
Or I would call that 10, and I would be in 10A.
Yeah.
So all these bills go to 10.
Yeah.
And I live in 10B, in Wales. No, I live at a 10, whatever the number is. Or I give my house a new name. I call it, the
A lot of people do. They do also.
the Elms.
They
And
have
then so when it
names,
comes, it says, well, that's not me. That's not my address.
This is why it's not written in stone. We know the deceit, we know the fraud, what's going on. So this is why there's so many different approaches people can take. And again, there's no right, there's no wrong. And it's
You've just got to be prepared for the game.
Be prepared for any eventuality that, I mean, somebody coming out to knock on your door to say, look, I've come from Eon to read your meters. I mean, you can deter a visit very, very easily. People panic when they don't need to. You can just say to them, I'm sorry, I'm not with that supplier anymore. Shut the door. Yeah. It's very, very easy to deal with it. It's these situations where customers have had lots of repeated hassle, lots and lots of visits, and then they've had like a pantomime visit, as I call it, with somebody waiving a warrant of entry under the 1954 Gas and Electricity Board Act. That's a different type of visit, and you're going to have to stand your ground. Not using violence, threatening behaviour. That's not going to work in this circumstance. This is about using the information that we have on our Telegram group, and about fraud, using the Fraud Act, using the Perjury Act, using the Harassment Act, and standing your ground. And obviously, through all that, if they have a warrant, which we discuss in our group sessions, the warrants that they are bringing to people's addresses, and this is the minority, this is not everybody. So start panicking, thinking, oh God, I don't want to deal with that, because it probably won't even happen to you. But if it did, these warrants are fraudulent, they're invalid because they're typed up in an admin court. No judge would sign one of these warrants. That's going to contravene their position, so they're not going to do that. So every warrant of entry that I've seen in the last 2 years, and I've seen a lot, they're all the same. They're electronic, they're printed off or on little iPads. They don't tend to give you a copy because they don't want you to have them, because they know they're invalid. They normally go under the Gas Safety Act to say that they believe that there might be something unsafe in the property, health and safety. So therefore, we need to have a check that there's no gas leaks. So these are the little loopholes that they go under, which we've learned. So again, this is why when you have your meters replaced, we advise you to get your safety certifications done on the property. So you might have already had them done. You have a gas one every 12 months, a CP12, Gas Landlord Safety Certificate. That's what it's normally called. And then your full electrical inspection, an EICR. So we always advise, you don't have to, but if you were to have loads of hassle and you've got a document that's a certificate that shows that the property is safe and secure. So, any warrant that's brought to the property, you can deter that via your safety certs. And
just at the door, you can just say, there you go, look, there, it's all done.
I wouldn't just give it them. I'd be showing it and covering up.
No.
You don't want to give them any personal information, etc. So there's like a series. What I do, run like an aftercare session for people that have had hassle on. These are the subjects that I would discuss. I.e., first of all, somebody came knocking at my door and there was 3 or 4 people there, because these visits are pantomime visits. So they'll bring a locksmith, they'll bring an engineer, they'll bring a representative. So there might be 3 or 4 people. So it's not a singular visit where you can just ignore it if you wanted to. You're probably going to have to speak to them. Sometimes you don't have to.
If you don't open the door, then they brought a locksmith. Can he just open the door?
You don't have to open it. You don't ever leave the door unopened. It can pick the locks, can start to pick the locks. That's why they bring these locksmiths. But the goal of the locksmith, because they're a third party, remember, they are responsible in their personal capacity to check that the warrant is valid. And they're not doing that.
And they're not doing it.
They're not doing their job, so you can hold them in their personal.
But if you have a bolt on the inside of your door, and they can pick your lock. Say you've got a Yale lock or something, or a Chubb, and they've able, we can do that. But they couldn't go any further than the bolt because they'd have to
bash it down with a hammer or anything like that. I mean, they can't damage the door. That's why they bring the locksmith. So again, you've got to take everything on the internet as a pinch of salt, because of course there's videos going around.
Oh, yes.
Also, so you've got to really deter yourself from that and think about logically what potentially could happen. And when you have the meters replaced, this is what we always advise. increase the security on your property in any way possible that you feel you want to. So for me, I've gone to the total extremes, because for me, that's me. I'm drama. So, you can put your CCTV cameras up, you can buy, guard dogs, you can build massive gates on the front of your property so no one can actually even gain access to the drive or the front door. Again, deadbolt in your front door. There's loads of little cheap devices that you can buy. You don't have to spend loads of money. You don't have to insert CCTV, because that's expensive, but you can if you want to. You don't have to put a 6-foot gate up inside of your house property where the meters are on the outside. You can change the locks on the meter cupboards. There's so many things, and this is why it's important to research through the group, because it answers all of your basic questions like that newbies have when they join. If they just spent a little bit of time flicking through and browsing, because what it's going to do, it's going to build your confidence, and it's going to empower you to actually think, actually, you know what? I'm just remembering who I am. I am suffering, and I can do this, and I am doing it. And I'm not going to let anybody come to my property and with a fraudulent piece of paper to try and gain access to my meter cupboard. So there's several things that we go through. And it can be easy, but it can be very difficult if you're still stuck in that low vibrational state of fear, because of course that's where they've kept a lot of people in the last 3 years. But there's more and more people that are gaining confidence, and like what you mentioned at the beginning, a lot of people go down this route because they can't afford to pay their bills, and they're paying their bills but not feeding their children. I mean, at some point something's going to click and you think, hang on a minute, this can't be right. Why are energy prices hiking? I mean, for me, it's a good thing, because it's going to put you into a state of having to look at alternatives. It's part of the Great Awakening. It's a positive thing. For me, I feel that the good, not the white hats, I don't like to use that terminology, but the good is doing this. It's for humanity, because it's to wake people up. So it's got to get dark before light then shines. There's got to be chaos before harmony. And these are the things that are happening to help people awaken and go through their own journey.
And it's that taking back control for yourself, because we've given away everything.
Yeah.
Because they've made it so easy to do that, like you say, with the switch thing, and all of that. Let's talk about the dreaded smart meters, because I've been plagued, as every time you're like, wouldn't you like a smart meter? And I go, bog off, I don't want one. So I haven't got one. My house is as very basic as you can be. But people have been, and I've had emails from my viewers saying, look, I've got a smart meter now, I regret it, what can I do, and I'm in this amount of debt and all this, and it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking that other living men and women who are employed by the state can do this to other like-minded people, because as we know, corporations are dead entities. It's just a concept, it's not real. And yet people are earning money by playing their game, and collecting money from people who can ill afford it, and who yet to wake up, and it's not their fault. So there's this horrible thing on the wall that's not only giving you electrical magnetic radiation, which is bad in and of itself, but that it could switch you to a key meter and potentially turn you off. This is something that you can get removed quite easily. And along with the meter, and then you go down the road that we've just been talking about. That's originally how it all started. That's how you got going.
And that was the whole concept. That's why we started doing it, because we just we wouldn't have a smart device in our property. But of course, you move in a new property, you can't always dictate to the billing agent on what type of meter, and they refuse to remove smart meters as well. In most cases, when the customer thinks that they've had the smart meter changed by the billing agent after months and months and months of formal complaints, etc., going down that health route, they just come out and they put it into a dumb mode, and they tell you that, it's not smart now, we've changed it, and it's not. They've not replaced the meter, they put it in a dumb mode.
So you can't go with a pair of sharp scissors and just take the two wires and just snip them.
Not advisable.
Right. Because I mean, presumably it's only small amount of electricity that's going into the smart meter. It's not the big
Well,
juicy.
they talk this normally. I mean, I'm not the best person to talk about that because I'm not very technical. But the engineers have explained it that it talks to the actual meter. Some people have this little device in the property that tells them how much money they're using and all that
Right. Oh, I
in
see.
energy. But it's the actual meter that's smart as well. So whether you've got
Oh, I
a tiny
see.
little device in the house, it's the actual meter.
Right.
And sometimes the gas one and the electric talk to each other as well. They're connected with the smart device, what they put in. There's all different types of smart devices, what they put in. There's the old style smart meter that they can't switch off, but the new style smart meters, they can switch it to a prepayment mode if you don't pay a bill. Of course, there's always new devices in it, as time goes by. So some people have got old smart meters where they wouldn't be able to switch them off remotely, which is good. But obviously, still you've got a smart device.
So if you have your meter changed, is it a second-hand meter that you get, or is it a brand new meter?
The engineers they'll buy them off eBay or second hand because we don't want there to be any health and safety risk, and we don't want to give the billing agent any avenue to take action. So they purchase brand new meters that have never been used. They are already MID certified before leaving the manufacturer. And the engineer likes to buy them, so because they're changing the meters all the way around the UK, and if there was a problem, they'd have to come straight back out. So if they'd travelled 5 hours up to Scotland, that's going to be a long trip for them if there was any issues with a second-hand meter. Plus,
and I guess they've got to be very careful because unlike you and I changing a fuse or something, you can't turn the electric off because they're actually going to the wires that come in off the road.
Yeah, it's got to be, for me, it's got to be someone who's experienced in that, because we're talking about people's health and safety, and that's number one priority. It's essential. So
and you get a certificate as well to prove it's been done properly.
So we don't. That's a separate job. An inspection, like a gas safety inspection, is a completely different job. So we used to do the safety certs as well, even though it's a second job. But the engineers are so busy with the replacements, they haven't got time to do another inspect. Like the electrical inspection, if you've got a big house, might take 3 hours before they can sign it.
Oh, I see. You're inspecting the whole of the. Yeah, I wouldn't want
it's not just the meter. There isn't such certificate that exists. So we get asked this a lot. And again, it's covered like in the group that after you've had the meters replaced, the next thing on your to-do list would be increase the security however you want to, put a trespass notice up, change the locks on the outside meter cupboards, etc. as basics. If you want to do all the extreme things, then you can do. But the next thing would be to ring round some local engineers just to do your safety inspections. You're not volunteering the information that you've had the meters replaced, because if they're on the same journey as you, they're not obviously going to understand. But, lots of people have these inspections done. They might be renting the property out. You might have just moved in and you've had a few issues and you're wanting to get your safety certs, although it's the landlord's responsibility normally. But you're paying them to do a job, so there shouldn't necessarily be any questions. But what they're not necessarily checking the meter, they're checking the property for gas leaks or for any electrical faults. So you don't have to have that done, and that's another expense. But I feel it's something that would help you, assist you further down the line if you were to have hassle. And again, it's good to get somebody totally unbiased that's not been involved in any of the replacements, that's totally neutral. Do you understand what I mean by that? I just feel that
absolutely. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Just in case there's a problem, then they say, it's the person who did the meter who's done your thing. You've got two independent.
And our engineers, Richard, are not going to be putting their names over thousands and thousands. They're just not going to do that. And again, you've got to understand they're put in a position that they've given up their full-time jobs to do this. And I mean, they're having fun, of course, and they're earning a living, but they're only doing that. They're not necessarily doing any other work.
No, so it's an alternative job to help people.
I guess it is, and it's about finding your own purpose. And obviously, our engineers have gone through their own awakenings and different paths. And we've got a really good team that run. They've got an admin who does all the bookings, and we always get engineers actually messages say, "Can I join your team?" And
oh right, yeah,
we do get that a lot. But at the minute, we're all right. We've got a good team. It's a trusted team. We're close knit. We've got everything covered off in sections, like in the UK, like the South Engineer, the North Engineer, and so we've all got their own areas, and it's just been ticking along for 2 years and grown huge, really.
If you're a tenant, presumably you can't change the meter.
Yeah, of course you can. Probably
Can
better
you?
if you're a tenant, because then you don't own your property, and if you own the property, you tend to the details on the land registry will be updated with your details. So don't forget, anyone can do land registry checks, etc. So this is not always, but there is a tendency for them to go after some time if they're thinking, oh, someone's in the property, but no one's signed up with anyone. They could go to land registry to gain access to your information, which obviously then is a data protection breach under GDPR. So they're not allowed to give your information out, but they have done. So this is what happens after some time. You might start having mail from that broker start being addressed to your legal fiction after some time. So again, at that point, do you decline the contract, you're not joined her in, you're not going to be doing business with them? And again, some people start writing to them, or some people just ignore it. Again, lots of deviations. I'm one of those, after 3 years of going down all these different routes, more than 3 years now, I'm under the impression for my journey that I'm on, that I'm not going to entertain them anymore, because I'm choosing not to be in the system. I'm not fighting the system, I'm just not in the system. So for me, I don't have mail, I don't have post. I'm not interested in opening up that communication line, because wherever you insert your energy, it's going to continue to flow. So if you're going to start writing to them, they're going to love that, because that opens up the communication line, and then it's going to go around in circles. But you've got to do what feels right for you in your circumstances. You might feel better going down a formal letter route then you've got your evidence. And if you go down that route, I would always advise, because I advise certain customers that feel comfortable, I'll say, right, when you write to them, at some point when you're asking all these questions about their claims, you're going to be revoking all implied rights of access to the property. So you're going to tell them up front that they're not allowed to visit. You're going to tell them that the house is a vulnerable household, because we can all be vulnerable. And you protect.
Oh, I'm very vulnerable. Vulnerable to thugs, I can tell you.
You're gonna send them safety certs to show that you're no longer using the meters that were in the property, and here's the evidence to show that the property is signed off safe and secure. And you're still waiting for evidence of that contract with your legal fiction. You're still waiting for the evidence of, do you supply the electric and gas at this property? Do you own the meters? So you'll go down that route. It's a good route to go down, but it's not for everybody.
Right. Could I take once the meter's changed, and I've got the old meter left, can I put that on my doorstep or at the end of the boundary and put it in a box and say, here's your meter, mate, come and pick it up. If you don't pick it up within 7 days, I'm putting it down the tip.
We've had customers that do similar things where they've said, right, I've had my meters taken off, I'm going to send those back to Eon. And for me, what you do there is, and again, if it resonates with you, then do it. But they don't own them, so why would you send something back when they don't own them?
Yes.
What that does is it gives them the avenue. What we've seen 2 years of people doing it is it gives them the evidence that the meters have been tampered with, and therefore they come at you a lot faster. If that makes sense.
So probably saying,
best not to. I've took the meters off. There might be a health and safety risk. So if you were, the only time you would talk about the old meters, and this is what I discussed on my aftercare session, is right at the end, if they've not, buggered off the property, if you've not got rid of them, you would bring these old meters out to say, look, these are the meters that were in the property when I moved in, or when I
and they weren't connected.
Look, these are the ones that match your database. I'm quite happy to hand them back because I'm reasonable. and I want to try and resolve matters. But first, you've got to give me some form of evidence that you own these meters.
Yes.
Provide me anything. And of course, you're calling their bluff all the time.
Absolutely, because somebody else might come with proof and say they own it.
Exactly.
So I'm not going to give it. I'm not going to give somebody else's property to you. If you can, absolutely, I can see all that.
That's what we normally say. But again, you've got to be creative with your own circumstances.
Yeah,
you
I love it.
You need to do that, then go for it. Some people, Richard, even send meter readings once a month to National Grid. And again, because they're the ones that are harnessing the energy, remember?
Yeah.
So I don't advise to do that. They do write back to you and they thank you and they tell you to sign up with a particular broker. They do tell you that. So they're not going to do it. National Grid don't ever come to cut you off they don't come with the warrant. It's the broker. And it's interesting because the actual warrants read that it has to be, it allows the operator to come to the house under that warrant. Well, a billing agent isn't the operator. Surely that's National Grid. Surely that just nullifies and invalidates the warrants that they are bringing.
Yes.
It has quietened down a lot on the warrants. It peaked in early summer. It really peaked where a lot of people were having hassle. And the purpose of those visits is for them to gain access to the meters, right? And once they gain access, they don't necessarily inspect them. They just take them out and they force fit a prepayment meter. So that's kind of worst case scenario what you're looking at. You're not getting handcuffed. You're not getting taken to prison because this is a civil matter. There's no crime because we have a meter back in. It's not energy theft. We're not bypassing a meter. We're not that stupid. We're playing the game. So that's worst case scenario, because a lot of people say that, well, okay, if I do this and it all goes tits up, what happens? Well, force fit of a prepayment meter, you'd have to top it up with a key fob. They'd probably put debt on it as well for that visit if they were successful in that visit. And of course, where we run these lessons on standing your sovereignty, standing your ground for them not to be successful. But if it was and it happened, or say if you were out and you got your outside meter cupboards broken into, because that happens, people don't protect them, or the locksmith can cut the locks what we've put on, they haven't got substantial locks, then there's a prepayment meter, then our engineers can come straight back out and they can take it off again and put your own meter in. So again, there's always a way. You never stop. Yeah, but it's what I'm trying to say. It's not ideal because that's
no. But
it's not repeatedly. We haven't had it repeatedly happen because there's something about prepayment meters that they leave alone because you don't have to set a direct debit up. You don't have to set an account up, so it kind of goes quiet. But there's always a way out. Like it's not the end of the world. It's not ideal, but again, this is why you need to do your research. You need to be prepared.
So you don't like with the council tax and all of these things, don't just go, oh, that's it, I'm going to do this, because you're more likely to come a cropper because you don't know enough, you haven't done your due diligence, and you're not prepared. But once you've got all that and you're in your standing and you understand who you are and who the legal fiction is, and you understand about jurisdiction and how to deal with people on the doorstep, all those sort of things, which at first sounds daunting, but you can, as people do, you understand it and it becomes part of life, and it's then becomes simple.
It does indeed, and it doesn't have to be scary, this process. Something not right if you're frightened. And that's where you need to go back to the beginning, work on removing fear. Fear is just an illusion. So work on that before you take that first step into anything. When you don't pay your council tax or your water and you've got loads of people coming every week banging at the door. I mean, for me, it's not a big issue. But again, everybody's on different levels, aren't they? And that's fine. Yes. We're all learning.
But the biggest thing, it seems to me, to remember about the whole thing is you're being scammed.
You are, and you're not in a contract.
Yeah, you're not in a contract. It doesn't matter
if they bring a warrant. You're not in a contract. The warrants that they do bring are always addressed to the occupier, funnily enough. They're never addressed to a legal fiction. So, again, it's just like, hello, how can you accept that warrant where it's not addressed to a name? Who's the occupier? You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
but
Oh,
again,
that is amazing.
yeah.
Well, listen, Kales, we're coming up to. I usually only do an hour on these.
No, that's perfect. That's it.
So people can find out more by going on your Telegram group, which is Free Energy Nationwide. I'll put the link in the description.
No problem.
And people can find out more about it, and they can learn as much as they like. And when they're ready, they can talk to you and talk to your engineers.
Yeah.
Or other places are available.
Yeah, we've got
all
a
of that.
chat, so there's lots of people that join, and they just, because it's just a group and they chat. But all I would say is you join as a new member and look at the file section, the link section, and the pinned messages. There's over 100, and that will answer all of your basic questions.
Right.
If you need more help, then I do like a few one-to-ones a week, but I want to get away from that because it's very time consuming.
Yes, I can imagine.
Our energy is so precious, it has to be reserved. So I've kind of took a reduction on that, but I try to do like once a month a group session where people can join, and I ask for a small fee for my time and energy. And that's what I do, but you don't have to join any of those. Like,
No.
you need to do this yourselves. This is about you and your journey. So read through the information on the group. There's loads of information.
So last thought then, before we go. I mean, it's obviously it's a numbers game. As more and more and more people start to realise that this is a scam, ultimately, if you've got, a few 5 million people all deciding, hang on a minute, government, hang on a minute, utility companies, you're just scamming us. We're not putting up with it.
We're saying
that
we're not
eventually
violence, we're not threatening behaviour. We just say it's simply not acquiescing.
Yeah.
And that's what this is about. And you're right, it's a very small percentage that would crumble everything. And it shows that in the last 2 years of the government's updating certain guidelines, because they've been caught out. I mean, it's been in the mainstream media all this year about them, British Gas namely, acting unlawfully, going to people's houses and force fitting prepayment meters when, I don't know, people are going through certain things like they've got cancer and they need their heating on, and they're going through chemotherapy and things like that, and they've been and because they have paid a bill, they've had bailiffs at the door, and they've took their meters out and they've put force fit prepayment meters, and that's been in the papers. So you've got to take it with a pinch of salt, of course, but the good thing that's happened, they've updated certain guidelines, and we could use those guidelines to protect us. So but no, it's fantastic being on the show, Richard. Thanks very much for your time.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, learnt a lot, and I hope the audience have. And as I say, the link will be in the description. Go and find out all that information. Prepare yourself before you do anything drastic. But the new year is coming, and New Year's resolutions is a good time to do things. So there you go. But if you're stuck and you can't pay, at least feed yourself and don't worry about these. There are people out there, good people like Kales and others, who are doing amazing work to help remind us that we should be free, and we shouldn't be enslaved to these people who are just bleeding us dry. Kales, thank you so much for coming on the show and explaining all about it. It's been absolutely brilliant. So there we are, ladies and gentlemen. Do join again next time. More monologues and wonderful interviews. But until then, from Kales and myself, goodbye.